Chapter 2. The Trantor Empire has claimed ownership of over 400 planets orbiting more than 300 stars. However, regardless of the sun's hue, the number of moons present, or the topography of the planet, once you enter a headquarters building, you are transported to Earth. Earth would seem foreign to many who identify as Earthlings, based on the peculiar sensation I always experienced when I entered that world of marble and glass within the towering structure. I could hear the echoes of my footsteps reverberating through the marble hallway, and I had to squint my eyes, painfully adjusting to the frigid yellow glow of the lights. The traffic division was a display of efficiency and arrogance, with its glass and chrome, polished steel, mirrors, windows, and towering electronic machines. One wall was dominated by a TV monitor that showed the spaceport, a vast open space illuminated by blue-white mercury vapor lamps, and a giant starship that was crawling with activity. The crew was preparing the ship for skylift the next morning. I couldn't help but stare at the ship. I knew I had to be on it when it lifted. I turned away from the monitor and saw myself reflected in the mirrored surfaces that surrounded me. I was a tall, lean man who had spent years under a red sun, leaving me bleached out and deeply scarred on my cheeks and around my mouth. Despite 6 years behind a desk, my business clothes, suitable for an Earthman with a desk job, didn't quite fit right. I still stood on the balls of my feet, imitating the stooping walk of a dry-towner from the Solaris plains. The clerk behind the sign marked Transportation was a small man with a sun-lamp tan. He was barricaded by a small-sized spaceport of a desk and looked like he enjoyed being shut up there. He looked up at me with a polite inquiry. "My name's Drake. Do you have a pass for me?" I asked. He stared at me in disbelief. A free pass aboard a starship was rare, except for professional spacemen, which I obviously wasn't. "Let me check my records," he said, hesitantly punching scanning buttons on the glassy surface. The shadows came and went, and I saw my reflection in a flurry of racing colors. The pattern finally stabilized, and the clerk read off names. Brill, Cameron. Ah, yes. Drake, Race Andrew, Department 38, Transfer Transportation. Is that you? I admitted it, and he started punching more buttons when my name made a connection in his brain. He stopped with his hand halfway to the button. "Are you Race Drake of the Secret Service, sir? The Race Drake?" "It's right there," I said, gesturing wearily at the projected pattern under the glassy surface. "Why, everybody took it for granted, that is, I heard—" "You thought Drake had been killed a long time ago because his name never turned up in news dispatches anymore?" I grinned sourly, seeing my image dissolve in blurring shadows, and feeling the long-healed scar on my mouth draw up to make the grin hideous. "I'm Drake, all right. I've been up on floor 38 for 6 years, holding down a desk any clerk could handle. You, for instance." He gaped at me. He was a rabbit of a man who had never stepped out of the safe, familiar boundaries of the Trantor Trade City. "You mean you're the man who went to Charon in disguise and routed out the lease? The man who scouted the Black Ridge and Shainsa? And you've been working at a desk upstairs all these years? It's hard to believe, sir." My mouth twitched. It had been hard for me to believe while I was doing it. "The pass?" I asked. "Right away, sir," the man replied, punching buttons on the desk. A printed plastic chip extruded from a slot. "Your fingerprint, please." I pressed my finger into the soft plastic, recording my print. After a moment, the chip hardened, and the man placed it in a pneumatic tube. "They'll check your fingerprint when you board the ship. Skylift isn't until dawn, but you can go aboard as soon as the process crew finishes with her." He glanced at the monitor screen, where the crew was still working on the spacecraft. "It will be another hour or two. Where are you going, Mr. Drake?" "Some planet in the Hyades cluster. Vanewall, I think, something like that." "What's it like there?" "How should I know?" I replied. I only knew that Vanewall had a red sun, and that the Trantor legate could use a trained intelligence officer. The man's voice held respect and even envy. "Could I buy you a drink before you go aboard, Mr. Drake?" "Thanks, but I have a few loose ends to tie up," I said, even though I had nothing to do. I didn't want to spend my last hour on Coruscant under the eyes of a desk-bound rabbit who preferred his adventure safely second-hand. After leaving the office and the building, I almost wished I had taken him up on his offer. It would be at least an hour before I could board the starship, with nothing to do but hash over old memories, better forgotten. The sun was lower now. Lee Solaris was a dim, dying star, and its light slanted into a long, pale, reddish twilight. 4 of Coruscant's 5 moons were clustered in a pale bouquet overhead, mingling thin violet moonlight into the crimson dusk. The shadows were blue and purple in the empty square as I walked across the stones and stood looking down one of the side streets. A few steps and I was in an untidy slum, which might have been on another world from the neat, bright trade city which lay west of the spaceport. The Igam was alive and reeking with the sounds and smells of human and half-human life. A naked child, diminutive and golden-furred, darted between 2 of the chinked pebble houses and disappeared, spilling fragile laughter like breaking glass. A little beast, half snake and half cat, crawled across a roof, spread leathery wings, and flapped to the ground. The sour, pungent reek of incense from the open street shrine made my nostrils twitch, and a hulked form inside, not human, cast me a surly green glare as I passed. I turned, retracing my steps. There was no danger, of course, so close to the trade city. Even on such planets as Coruscant, Terra's laws are respected within earshot of their gates. But there had been rioting here and in Charon during the last month. After the display of mob violence this afternoon, a lone Trantor, unarmed, might turn up as a solitary corpse flung on the steps of the HQ building. In my past, I once walked alone from Shainsa to the polar colony. I knew how to blend in with the night, wearing a shabby shirt-cloak and carrying only a razor-sharp skein. I walked like a dry-towner, not looking or sounding like an Earthman. However, a rabbit in the traffic office had caused me trouble that I wished to forget. It had been 6 years since then, and I had been stuck behind a desk, slowly dying. Lyric Archer had left me a marked man, with a death warrant written on my face outside of Trantor law on Coruscant. Lyric had been the one to teach me the ways of the Igam, the catmen of the rainforests, and the Argo of thieves' markets. He had disappeared, leaving me alone and marked. I had quit my job and was leaving tonight. As I walked towards the spaceport, I passed a street shrine where a toy seller had vanished. I stared at the image of Nebran, the toad god, before moving on to the spaceport cafe. A group of spaceport workers, including some furry creatures and a trio of rugged men in colorful cloaks, were gathered in a cafe. I felt out of place in my business attire, surrounded by the uniforms of the spacemen and the vibrant clothing of the dry-towners. A young woman with pale hair approached me to take my order, and I requested some food and drink. One of the dry-towners began to insult me in their native language, a common joke among Coruscantans. I responded in kind, but things quickly escalated when the men stood up and reached for their weapons. I prepared for a fight, but then realized they were looking behind me in terror. The men fled the cafe, leaving chaos in their wake. I turned to see a small woman with black hair adorned with stars. A sleek black belt encircled her slim waist, resembling clasped hands. Her stark white robe bore an unsightly embroidery across her chest, depicting the conventionalized toad god, Nebran. Her features were delicate, chiseled and pale, a dry-town face that was all human and all woman, yet set in an otherworldly and unearthly repose. Her great red eyes gleamed, almost unseeing, while her inhumanly malicious crimson lips curved into a smile. She stood motionless, staring at me as if questioning why I hadn't fled with the others. In a split second, her smile vanished, replaced by a look of recognition. Whoever or whatever she was, she had saved me from being mauled. I began to express my gratitude, but was interrupted by my astonishment. The cafe had emptied, and we were alone. Even the chaks had leapt through an open window, and I caught a glimpse of a disappearing tail. We stood frozen, gazing at each other while the toad god sprawled across her chest rose and fell for several breaths. Then I took a step forward, and she took a step back simultaneously. In one swift motion, she was outside in the dark street. It took me only a moment to follow her, but as I stepped across the threshold, there was a slight stirring in the air, like the rising of heat waves across the salt flats at noon. Then the street shrine was empty, and the girl was nowhere to be found. She had vanished, as if she had never been there at all. I stared at the empty shrine, dumbfounded. She had stepped inside and disappeared like a wraith of smoke, like the little toy seller they had hunted out of the Igam. The eyes of the street were upon me, and I realized that I was not alone. Meddling with a street shrine was just as perilous as tangling with the skeins of my 3 loud-mouthed dry-town roughnecks. I turned and walked away, crossing the square for the final time, heading towards the looming spaceship. I filed the girl away as yet another enigma of Coruscant that I would never unravel. How mistaken I was.